Okay, we'll turn for a next opening statement to Aron-Ra, whom I introduced earlier. And please, Aron.
Thank you. When I first became, I guess, defined as an activist, it was when I found myself in internet discussions with various fundamentalist believers. I couldn't believe some of the arguments that real live people were coming out with, and that people actually believed this kind of thing. And I remember inquiring, as to the reasons that they believe what they believe, and very often I was surprisingly disappointed with some of the answers that they were given. But one of these guys who was in New Mexico, I said, I love New Mexico. I was talking about all the New Age pagan-type people that I met out there, all the little hippies in New Mexico. I thought everybody in New Mexico was like hiding under an assumed name or something. That's why they lived there. But this guy alerted me to a whole other culture that I didn't know about. And he started bragging about judges and senators that his organization, this network of churches, had positioned. And this is the way he phrased it. And he was the first person, surprisingly, to alert me to the wedge strategy. And he explained, in his own words, what he intended to do, what his church was trying to do. And what he was describing was nothing short of a theocracy. And he alerted me to other people that were pushing in the same direction, and I started coming across all of these other people that wanted, in some cases, to erect a government that enforced Levitican law. And that the Chalcedon Institute that was founded by one of these people was the source of a significant number of people that were in control of the federal government already. And I began to argue that you realize that Christianity is, regardless what you may want to believe, Christianity is statistically in a state of stagnation or decline, and that Islam is the fastest growing religion on earth. Now, what does that tell you in 10 to 15 years when you set up a government that enforces religious law? Logically, where does that lead? Your children. Do you understand my stance on why I talk about freedom of religion? It requires that there be freedom from religion, and this is a position that Christians should be adopting also, but they couldn't see that. They couldn't envision a world where Islam would be the dominant religion, and then they would also start talking about division amongst themselves. How the Catholics weren't real Christians, and neither were the Jehovah's Witnesses. They weren't real Christians either, certainly not the 12 million Mormons that they had out there. They're not real Christians. And also, okay, so what you're saying is that Islam is already the world's largest religion, because Catholicism, accounts for over half of you. So if you eliminate these people, now you're already in a situation where Islam is the dominant religion. And are you sure you want to erect a government that will be formed and adjudicated by a religious faction of beliefs that you don't happen to agree with? It's fine as long as you agree with the current setting. But that setting is going to change, and you have to look at the future. And I was raised in an environment where I was told that we live in the best country in the world, that ours was the best religion, ours was the best state, whatever school I happen to go to happens to be the best school. Ours, my family raised me to believe, this is the best damn country in the world. I don't need to know about any other place. And it occurred to me that maybe they'd never read Aesop's fables. Maybe they don't know about the tortoise and the hare. I remember telling my dad, we haven't been the foremost country in science advances in a decade at least. We're the rabbit sleeping on the side of the road. The turtle's way the hell up there. And it's time for us to wake up. As I said, when I became an activist was when I became alerted to the fact that there was an attempt to erect a theocracy. And I started preparing myself for what I thought would be a battle where I may be implemented. And fortunately, it turned out that the battle happened to occur in the state that I already lived in when I discovered the Texas Board of Education. What it alerted me was that there was this guy named Mark Ramsey who was courting the Board of Education. He was attending all these different meetings, and he was bringing this ridiculous list to teach both sides. He wanted to teach the controversy. They keep coming up with different words to present this. And finally, he came up with teach the strengths and weaknesses. I had an opportunity to ask him once upon a time when I saw his list of weaknesses, which are laughable, and I have a copy, and you're welcome to see them. I asked him, what are the strengths of evolution? And, of course, he had no answer. He wants to teach both sides. Well, let's see what aspect of my side would you be willing to teach? What I ended up having to do was I surveyed the positions of the people on the Board of Education, and I found two shining winners that really needed an education. And so what I did was I took Mark Ramsey, who happened to run an evangelical ministry, surprise, surprise. He said that he had many patents. He was an engineer of some sorts, and that the evidence eventually convinced him that the earth was only 6,000 years old and that it was created by magic. But he wouldn't express what that evidence was. That was something that was private and personal. Well, if it's evidence, it's not private and it's not personal. You can divulge that and help change all of our minds. But, of course, that wasn't the way he wanted to go about it. He wants to challenge the children. They're not interested in college. They're not interested in trying to teach anybody who already knows better. They want to teach impressionable children to the point that they can't know better, and that's the agenda. So I selected Terry Leo to moderate a debate between myself and Mark Ramsey. Now, I couldn't get any support from anybody because everybody thought I was a scientist. And I said, no, I'm just a student. I'm nobody. I'm a retired tattoo artist. I'm perfect because I have no reputation to destroy in this matter. So I selected as moderators Terry Leo, who had expressed the sentiment that there were no such thing as any transitional species, that nobody had ever found a transitional species. I got Mark Ramsey to admit that there were, as he said, few transitional species, but he refused to teach that. He wanted to teach that there were absolutely none, and he said so in the debate. I'm like, okay, so you're just willing to lie to the children is what you're telling me. It doesn't matter, accuracy, truth, it doesn't matter. You just whatever you want them to believe, that's what you're going to teach, and facts be damned. Another moderator I chose was Don McElroy. He hadn't yet ascended to be the chairman of the board. At that point, I couldn't see him ascending to anything. He was, I swear, I chose him in 2005, before he was put in his current position. I chose him because he was clearly the stupidest person on the entire panel, according to everything he'd ever said in public record.
It's a horse race, though.
No, I've seen some winning comments from some of the others, but he was the record holder. He was the one most in need of an education. So when I have my debate with Mark Ramsey and with these two people moderating, I selected a handful of other moderators. I chose Dr. Robert Bacher, famed paleontologist. He's the one with the long hair and the beard and the funky-looking hat. He's the cantankerous old man. Looks like he should have a mule heavily loaded down behind him. Oddly enough, that guy had gone to Harvard and Yale, and we did a long stint at Johns Hopkins, but you wouldn't know it to look at him. Neither would you guess that he was a Pentecostal preacher and a world-famous paleontologist. He was the one that was that modeled one of the characters for Jurassic Park. I selected another moderator who was a genetics instructor at a college that I went to, who had been cited in Nature for her work, her contribution to the Human Genome Project. And she also happened to be very active in her church in trying to familiarize the Christians in her congregation with the aspects of science and how science works and what the purpose of it is. So there I have a geneticist and a paleontologist, and I selected one other moderator, and he was a geologist working for a major geological concern in China at the present, and he was a former young Earth creationist and an artist or an author for one of the Creation Research Quarterly magazines. And he had, when he got into professional geology, reached a series of steps, one of which involved him believing something entirely different Monday through Friday than what he believed Saturday and Sunday. He entered a world of two different realities completely before he finally had to realize that, Sunday and Saturday, Monday through Friday actually is still true on Sunday too. Damn it. So I have a geologist, a paleontologist, and a geneticist, 2 members of the Board of Education, and all of them were Christian. The reason that they all had to be, the reason that my scientific experts promoting evolution had to be Christian, was because I was not going to let this denigrate into a debate over whether or not there is a God. The discussion of whether we teach evolution is not a theological or religious discussion. There is not a polarity here, and damn it, these people behind me prove that. But it denigrated anyway.